My wife made me a cup of coffee that tasted really weird. I knew I would die if I drank it. So I did the unthinkable. I switched cups with my son-in-law. They say the biggest betrayals never come from strangers. They come from the people closest to you, the ones you trust with your life, the ones you share your bed with. This story begins on a deceptively pleasant Sunday morning. Our routine was the monthly family brunch at our condo overlooking Lake Michigan. It was supposed to be a picture of domestic bliss, but every family gathering had felt like walking across a sheet of thin ice for the last 3 years. Seated across from me was Melissa Grant, my son-in-law, a handsome, ambitious man in his late 30s. He worked in the same ruthless tech sector as I did, and he'd been climbing the ladder aggressively. A little too aggressively, perhaps. His presence was a constant reminder of the fierce professional competition that ran between us, especially since he'd joined a rival firm. Next to me was Daniel Hale, my wife of 20 years. Daniel, with her perfectly styled hair and impeccably tailored silk blouse, was the image of an elegant Chicago socialite. But her smile, it hadn't reached her eyes in years. Lately, I'd noticed a strange, almost shared silence between her and Melissa. Whispers that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. A subtle shift in their posture. I'd dismissed it as paranoia. I was wrong. If you are watching this video, please subscribe and comment. Let me know where you are watching from, and watch how I exposed the murder plot of my wife and son-in-law. Darling, don't you want to try the coffee I made especially for you, honey? Daniel asked. Her voice was too sweet, her eyes holding that same odd, unsettlingly detached look I'd seen on Melissa's face just moments earlier. She placed the personalized mug in front of me. The cup was beautiful, but the liquid inside, it had a strange, almost metallic smell. It cut right through the rich, expected aroma of a dark roast, tightening a cold knot in my stomach. I lifted the cup, pretending to admire the pattern, while my mind raced. I couldn't forget the last 3 years. The mysterious bouts of food poisoning. The sudden, debilitating stomach cramps had cost me crucial board meetings. The unexplained dizziness that doctors couldn't pin down always occurred after sharing a meal prepared or handled by either Daniel or Melissa. This wasn't caution anymore. This was instinct. A raw, primal warning bell ringing in my head that I couldn't afford to ignore. How thoughtful of you, Daniel, I replied, forcing a smile that felt like concrete. I studied the murky surface of the coffee. It looked too dark, too dense. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that if I drank this, I would end up in an emergency room again. Or worse. I needed proof, and I needed it now. Making a show of checking my phone, I stood up abruptly. Oh, would you look at that? I need to make a quick, urgent call for the London office. Melissa, would you mind if I use the study? I need the quiet. As I walked past the dining table, my heart hammered against my ribs. I deliberately stumbled, a clumsy, old man maneuver. I lurched against the table, steadying myself with an outstretched hand, and in the fleeting confusion of spilled water and muttered apologies, I made my move. I quickly and deliberately switched my coffee mug with Melissa Grant's. I'm so sorry. I'm such a klutz sometimes, I exclaimed, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flood. Melissa barely waved off my apology, already engrossed in his phone. Daniel's smile, however, was tight and unnatural. Just try not to break anything in the study, Michael. I nodded and hurried away, clutching my phone, which was already silently recording, my legs carrying me toward the dark sanctuary of the study. Now all I could do was wait and watch, and pray my deadly hypothesis was about to be proven right. From the study doorway, the elegant dining room felt less like a home and more like a stage for a slow-motion catastrophe. My hand gripped the doorframe, steadying myself as the adrenaline pulsed. I was supposed to be on an urgent call, but I only dialed a burner number I kept specifically for moments like this, a silent, recording witness. I watched Daniel and Melissa. They hadn't noticed my absence yet, too preoccupied with their sick game. My stomach clenched, a cold, hard ball of anxiety. Every rational part of me screamed to stop him, to run out there and knock the poisoned brew from his hands. But the pain, the humiliation, and the sheer number of unexplained illnesses over the past months fueled a darker, more necessary resolve. I needed to know the truth. I needed proof that was impossible to deny, impossible for them to spin as my paranoia. Melissa brought the cup to his lips. Before he took a sip, he exchanged a quick, lopsided smirk with Daniel. It was a conspiratorial glance, a tiny private moment of shared guilt and anticipation. That smirk, that brief flash of knowing malice, confirmed every suspicion I had ever held. It wasn't about an accident. It was calculated. It was planned. I remembered the last trip to the emergency room, 2 months ago, after a seemingly harmless breakfast prepared by Daniel. The doctors found traces of something they couldn't identify, and Daniel had convinced everyone it was just expired medication. I knew then that the pattern wasn't just clear. It was getting deadlier. Melissa took a second, deeper drink. I watched his hand. A slight tremor ran through it, barely noticeable, but my eye, honed by 3 years of cautious observation, caught it instantly. He set the cup down, his face suddenly pale and clammy. The smugness was gone, replaced by a look of confusion that quickly morphed into panic. "Daniel," Melissa said, his voice shaking, barely a whisper across the silent room. "Something's wrong." Daniel looked up, his wife's face morphing from detached elegance to sheer, gut-wrenching horror as she finally understood. She didn't look at Melissa, she looked at the cup. She saw her meticulous plan crumbling, the fate meant for me now resting in her son-in-law's hands. "Melissa, what's happening?" Daniel shrieked, the veneer of composure instantly shattered. Melissa's hands were trembling violently now. He tried to stand, grabbing the edge of the dining table for support, but his legs betrayed him. He stammered, his words slurring. I feel... She scrambled to her feet, knocking her chair over with a loud, clattering bang that finally broke the dreadful silence. Her eyes were wide with a terror that wasn't for Melissa, but for the devastating failure of the plan. "Melissa, what did you put in that coffee?" she screamed, the irony heavy enough to crush the air. This was my moment. The truth was unraveling before my eyes. My recorder had captured every chilling word. I kept the phone pressed to my ear, ensuring the recording continued. Daniel was beside Melissa now, his face a terrifying shade of ash gray as he realized which cup Melissa was drinking from. The cup meant for the senior tech executive, not the junior one. "That wasn't supposed to be your cup," Daniel whispered, the words carrying clearly through the room's stillness, a devastating, undeniable confession. I stepped into the room, my voice shockingly steady, cutting through Daniel's frantic whispers. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I simply stated the obvious, the phone still recording in my hand. "Melissa, what did you put in the coffee?" Daniel jumped back, his eyes darting between me and Melissa. "Michael, wait! It's a misunderstanding. He's allergic to the milk, that's all." The lie was pathetic. I held my ground. I've already called 911, now answer me. Melissa, however, was past the point of deception. He was collapsing, the violent tremors racking his body, forcing him to slide to the polished hardwood floor. That wasn't supposed to be your cup, Daniel whispered, stepping over Melissa to get closer to me. It wasn't a denial, but a desperate plea for me to understand his original intention. But the words were already sealed, captured by the microphone. My daughter, Serena Vaughn, finally ran in from the living room, drawn by the commotion. She gasped, seeing her husband convulsing on the floor. Her panic was real, a stark contrast to the calculated terror in Daniel's eyes. Daniel was growing more frantic by the second, trying to pull Melissa up. We need to stop talking. Melissa, listen to me. It was just supposed to make him miss the board meeting. We said it would make him sick enough to miss the Henderson pitch next week. The words hung in the air. The motive, the timeline, the collusion, all laid bare. Through gritted teeth, his body seizing, Melissa snapped back at my wife, his voice thick with pain and rage. He was ready to throw Daniel under the bus. Shut up, Daniel. This is all your fault. You promised it wouldn't be traced. You said it was a compound that would only cause mild, temporary illness to discredit him. You promised we'd get the CEO position when Michael failed to land the biggest client of the year. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just corporate sabotage. It was a bid for my entire position, a coup engineered by my wife and my son-in-law. The Henderson account, I stated, my voice low and dangerous. The flu-like symptoms last month. The food poisoning 6 months ago that landed me in the hospital for 3 days. Those weren't accidents either, were they? Melissa, clutching his stomach, nodded weakly. The tea. That was supposed to keep you home during the quantum contract presentation. He spat the words out, resentment momentarily overriding the pain. We've been planning this for months, ever since you started outperforming me at every board meeting, every big client. They wanted Michael Cross, not Melissa Grant. The Henderson account was the final straw. The sirens outside grew deafening, cutting through the confession. Daniel froze, his face a mask of defeat and pure panic. He looked around wildly, realizing he was trapped. Emergency medical personnel burst through the front door. I stepped aside, allowing EMT Elliot and his partner to assess Melissa quickly. As they loaded him onto a stretcher, I promptly sent the recording to my private email and then forwarded it to the email of my lawyer, Jonathan Pierce. Evidence secured. I met Daniel's terrified gaze. He was silent. His carefully constructed facade finally crumbled. I walked over to the stretcher. I'll ride with him to the hospital, I told the paramedics, my voice firm and authoritative. After all, I must ensure my son-in-law gets the proper treatment. I looked directly at Daniel, who finally bowed his head in silent acknowledgement his guilt. And I'm certain the doctors will be very interested in knowing exactly what was in that coffee, I concluded. I followed the stretcher out of the apartment, leaving my wife, Daniel Hale, standing alone amidst the wreckage of a failed plot and a shattered marriage. The emergency room at the Chicago General Hospital was a flurry of organized chaos. I sat in the sterile waiting room, the panic and adrenaline of the morning beginning to recede, replaced by a cold, quiet sense of resolve. I still clutched my phone, replaying the recording of Daniel and Melissa's frantic confession. Every tremor in their voices, every incriminating word, was all the evidence I needed. My wife, Daniel, was conspicuously absent. He'd mumbled about parking the car 20 minutes ago and hadn't returned. I knew he was either stalling, attempting to devise a new lie, or trying to disappear entirely. A soft voice pulled me out of my thoughts. "Family of Melissa Grant, Mr. Cross?" Nurse Nora, a kind woman with tired eyes, called out. I stood up immediately. "I'm his father-in-law," I said, following her through the double doors. "How is he?" "He's stabilized, but we found concerning levels of toxins in his system," Nora replied, her expression grave. "The doctor would like to speak with you about some unusual findings in his blood work." Dr. Lawson, a tall woman with sharp, professional eyes, was waiting by Melissa's room. "Mr. Cross, could you tell me exactly what happened before your son-in-law became ill?" she asked, tablet in hand. I took a deep breath, pulling out my phone. "Doctor, I think you should listen to this first." I played the recording from brunch. The silence in the small examination room was absolute, and Daniel's desperate voice, captured clearly, admitted that the cup wasn't supposed to be your cup. Dr. Lawson's professional concern quickly shifted to alarm. She stopped the recording and scribbled notes furiously. "This is very serious, Mr. Cross. The substance we found isn't something that accidentally ends up in coffee. We're looking at deliberate contamination." Just then, Daniel appeared at the end of the hallway. He was pale and sweaty, having clearly overheard the doctor's damning final statement. "Michael," he started, taking a shaky step toward me. "Let me explain. It's all a misunderstanding. Melissa was confused." Dr. Lawson pressed the nurse's call button without taking her eyes off Daniel. "Security to room 412, please." Daniel threw his hands up in a gesture of false surrender. "Really, Michael? We were just—" I cut him off, pulling up the second burner phone. I found strange texts on his other device last week, and secretly forwarded them to myself. "And these messages, Daniel?" My voice was cold, razor sharp. "The ones between you and Melissa, about making sure Michael is out of commission before the presentation. Were those friendly conversations too?" Daniel's face drained of the last bit of color. "You went through my phone?" "After I found the strange bottles and files hidden in your desk drawer, yes, I did," I confirmed. I turned back to Dr. Lawson. "Doctor, I've been hospitalized 3 times in the past 6 months, with unexplained, similar symptoms. I'd like to know if they match what you found in Melissa's system today." Dr. Lawson's eyes narrowed. "We'll need to run some tests to compare." 2 security guards arrived, positioning themselves on either side of Daniel. He looked trapped, his carefully constructed persona finally crumbling under the weight of the evidence. "Nina and I, Melissa and I," he stammered, shaking his head. "We were just trying to help you slow down. You were working too hard, taking all the big clients. Melissa said if we could just make you take some time off." I finished the sentence for him, my voice devoid of emotion. "By poisoning me?" The guards led Daniel to a private room, where he would be kept until the police arrived. Dr. Lawson nodded to me. "I've already contacted the police. Detective Carter is on her way. She'll want to take statements from everyone involved." Detective Carter arrived within the hour. She was a seasoned investigator who specialized in domestic crimes, her presence commanding attention even in the chaos of the hospital corridor. She listened intently as I played the recording from brunch and recounted the history of accidents. She didn't interrupt. Her sharp eyes only narrowed as I detailed the repeated, near-fatal incidents. "Mr. Cross," she said, reviewing her notes. "You mentioned previous hospitalizations. Can you tell me more about those incidents?" I pulled out my phone and opened a document I'd been meticulously maintaining for months, a logbook of my deterioration. The first time was almost a year ago, after a dinner Daniel prepared. Severe stomach pains and dizziness. The second was in April, the tea incident. They said it was a rare bug. And then in June after breakfast at my own home. My voice remained steady, clinical. Each time the symptoms were similar but different enough that the doctors couldn't pinpoint a cause. I started keeping this record the day I noticed the pattern. Detective Carter looked impressed by the sheer detail. But then I pulled out my trump card. The burner phone. Detective, I started carrying this backup phone with a different number when I realized what I was up against. I used it to record conversations when I was around them. I played a few clips, excerpts where Daniel and Melissa, thinking they were alone, discussed their plans, careful not to be explicit, but damning nonetheless. In one, Melissa's voice came through clearly. The CEO position is worth millions, Daniel. We can't let him ruin everything we've worked for. Just stick to the plan. Just as the recording faded, Dr. Lawson entered the room, her expression grave. Detective, we finished the preliminary analysis on Mr. Grant's blood work. We've found elevated levels of several substances. Most concerning is the presence of a particular compound typically used in pharmaceutical testing. It's not something the general public should have access to. The door opened again, and another officer, Elliot, entered, holding an evidence bag. Detective Carter, we found these in Mr. Grant's locked office desk at the rival firm, Elliot reported, presenting several small bottles with clinical labels and detailed notes about dosages and reactions. I felt my knees weaken as I stared at the clinical labels and the meticulous handwriting. You were documenting everything, I stated slowly, the realization hitting me like a physical blow, like some kind of experiment. Melissa was held in a separate room and brought in briefly for identification. He could only manage a whisper. It wasn't like that. We just needed to track what worked. The first few attempts weren't effective enough. You kept showing up to meetings anyway. So you increased the dosages, Detective Carter concluded, examining the bottles. Did you know these substances could be lethal in higher concentrations? The room fell silent. I stepped closer to Melissa, my voice firm despite the turmoil inside. The concentration in the coffee you drank today was significantly higher than previous samples they analyzed from my earlier hospital visits. The coffee today was supposed to be fatal, wasn't it? You didn't just want me out of the way. You wanted me permanently gone. Melissa closed his eyes, unable to meet my gaze. His silence was the final, devastating answer. Detective Carter turned to her team. We'll need a full warrant for both their homes and offices immediately, and contact the pharmaceutical company listed on these bottles. We need to find out exactly how they obtained these substances. Down the hall, I heard a commotion. Daniel, under guard, was arguing loudly. I need to speak with my wife. Christina, please. You don't understand. We were trying to protect you. Detective Carter stepped between us, her voice sharp. Mr. Hale, you're not helping your case. We've already found evidence of premeditated poisoning. Daniel's face was ghostly. Poisoning? No, that's not what we meant to do. I met his eye. Then what exactly did you mean to do, Daniel? What did you think would happen when you put something designed for clinical testing into my coffee? The silence that followed was deafening. He knew he was done. The trial lasted 3 weeks, but it felt like years. Every morning I walked into the courtroom in Chicago not as the successful tech executive, but as the victim of a calculated, drawn-out conspiracy. Watching my wife, Daniel, and my son-in-law, Melissa, felt like an open-heart surgery, slowly exposing every layer of betrayal and deceit. The defense attorney, Jonathan Pierce, tried every angle: accidental contamination, stress-induced hallucinations, and even claiming that Melissa's recorded confession was given under duress while poisoned. But their arguments were flattened by the sheer volume of evidence we had meticulously collected. The prosecution, led by the brilliant prosecutor Rachel Morris, presented the case methodically, piece by damning piece. First came the recorded confession from the dining room, the audio clip where Daniel admitted the poison wasn't supposed to be your cup. Then the damning evidence from Melissa's office, the small clinical bottles, and most powerfully, the handwritten logbook detailing my symptoms, the dates of administration, and the increasing dosages. Dr. Lawson's testimony was particularly devastating. She provided a comprehensive analysis, showing that the substances found in Melissa's blood were indeed designed to cause severe systemic harm. She clearly articulated how the defendants had gradually increased the potency over time, demonstrating a clear intent to cause severe damage, a crucial element for the attempted murder charge. A representative from the pharmaceutical company confirmed that Melissa, through a contact, had stolen the compounds from a research facility. They testified that these were not kitchen spices or expired medication. They were controlled, experimental toxins. Daniel and Melissa themselves were ghosts of the people I had known. Daniel, usually so polished and composed, looked small and frail in the defendant's chair. He never once made eye contact with me, keeping his gaze fixed on the floor. Melissa's intense, ambitious facade had shattered entirely, replaced by the hollow fear of a man realizing his life's ambitions were about to end in a prison cell. In her closing statement, Rachel Morris was uncompromising. This wasn't mere professional jealousy, ladies and gentlemen. This was a sustained, systematic attempt to harm Mr. Cross, carried out against a family member over an extended period. The escalation in dosages was not accidental. It was a premeditated move toward murder. When the foreman finally stood to read the verdict, the silence in the courtroom was absolute, heavy enough to crush the air. The verdict: guilty on all major counts, including attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. I felt no euphoria, no desire for vengeance, only a profound relief. The long nightmare was finally over. The judge's words echoed through the silent chamber as he delivered the maximum sentence. The court found that the premeditated, calculated nature of these actions, carried out against a spouse and father-in-law, demands that the perpetrators be removed from society. I watched as Daniel and Melissa were led away in handcuffs. I thought about how greed, envy, and an insatiable desire for the CEO position had twisted two people I once trusted into something utterly unrecognizable. Their careers, their reputations, and their freedom, all sacrificed in a dark, twisted attempt to destroy me. I stood up, adjusted my tie, and left the courtroom doors. The truth had finally come out. Justice had been served, and the time had come for me to stop looking back at the wreckage and start building the future I had almost been denied. My focus was already shifting back to the tech world, fueled not by anger, but by a quiet, determined resilience. It was exactly 1 year later. I stood at the Chicago Tech Leaders Conference podium, preparing to give the keynote speech. The ballroom was packed, a sea of bright, ambitious faces from the industry. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was precisely the kind of opportunity Melissa and Daniel had tried to prevent me from achieving, the kind of professional acclaim they wanted to poison me to stop. The trial's aftermath had been brutal, a tabloid sensation in the Chicago papers. But I didn't let the noise define me. I poured my energy back into what I did best: technology, and leadership. And the result? The Henderson account, which Melissa had been so desperate to steal, didn't just stay. It thrived. That success led to several more major client acquisitions, cementing my reputation as one of the top senior tech executives in the region. I wasn't just surviving, I was surging. I looked out at the audience, breathed, and began my speech. Success isn't just about talent or hard work, I said, my voice resonating with a quiet authority born from experience. It's about integrity and building genuine relationships based on trust. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Sometimes, the biggest threats to our success don't come from market fluctuations or global competitors. They come from those closest to us, from betrayal. But surviving those challenges and choosing to rise above them makes us exponentially stronger. My speech wasn't just about technology. It was a veiled testament to resilience. I spoke about believing your instincts, even when they tell you something terrifying. After the applause, several young professionals approached the stage seeking advice. Each shining with determination, one woman asked me what I knew was coming. "Mr. Cross, how did you maintain your composure throughout the ordeal? How did you keep going?" I smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile this time. I focused on what I could control. I gathered evidence. I trusted my gut. And most importantly, I refused to let fear stop me from pursuing my goals. Don't ever let someone else's greed define your future. Later that evening, sitting in my quiet home office, a home that now felt truly safe for the first time in years, I received an email. It was from the Henderson client, confirming they were renewing their contract for another 3 years. I leaned back, a sense of profound peace washing over me. I noticed the local paper online. There was a small, cold article about Daniel Hale and Melissa Grant beginning their prison sentences in an Illinois correctional facility. I didn't click on it. I didn't need to. I focused instead on the proposal for my newest client project. I realized then the true, ultimate victory. The best revenge wasn't about getting even, but moving forward and succeeding despite those who tried to hold me back. I was thriving, respected, and safe. My life was better without the betrayal and the poison. Justice had won. This is my story of survival. It's a reminder that sometimes the most brutal battle is fought at your dining table. But you will prevail if you trust your gut, keep your evidence, and never stop fighting for your truth. If you enjoyed this thrilling story of family betrayal, please hit the like button on this video. Subscribe to see more true family betrayal stories, and share your thoughts on Michael's incredible journey in the comments. And to hear the next story of betrayal and triumph, click on the video on my channel. Thanks for watching.